Game three, competitive game between two players that they prove that they're really among the top, I guess. Competitive game, to be honest. Really strong play from both sides. Good choices, actually. Game three, Gukesh had white pieces. Some people were surprised by the opening choice. I was not. So we had one d4. Ukesh is known for e4, but they have plenty of time before the match. They have preparation that they could play whatever openings they could do to surprise their opponent, which is ding. So we had knight f6, very typical stuff. The next move is actually the move order thing that it kind of funny. I mean, you could play it c4, but we had knight f3. It probably doesn't matter much, but I felt it was a funny move order thing. d5, c4, e6. White has a choice here, and the next choice is actually interesting. I don't disagree with it. I actually feel like it's a good choice. Takes. This has been trending in India, and also Magnus has been playing this. So this is actually the exchange variation, the Queen's Gambit. So black takes, knight c3, c6. This is all standard. Queen c2, g6. Usually the bishop wants to go to f5. So h3 and bishop f5, queen b3, and the queen is attacking on b7. Queen b6. And then the next move is g4. I looked over the database. I think there's a competitive game between Vladimir Kramnik and also Nepo. And Nepo was having the black pieces. And I think Nepo played bishop e6. But here we have Ding played takes, and then we have this tricky line. Bishop c2. This is tricky line. And it's tricky move. And it's not easy. And I feel like this is really good choice by Gukesh and his team. The reason being is the next move is pretty logical. You move here. Now you could argue and say, could I take the pawn at b3? I could tell you in this line the reason it's tricky is the bishop is actually almost trapped on c2. Should you take on b3, which is, I could show you a line where this is not very good for black. Knight here. I believe you take e3. You're looking at bishop takes c4. Should you play this? You're looking at two different lines, two different moves. Bishop g2. You could also take on b5. Should you take here? That bishop was extremely a strong diagonal here and just should be winning. So you have to be careful here if you take. If bishop here, you have to move your king on e2 or d1. And we've been seeing both players not really castling their king. This is very typical for them to do, obviously depending on the position at the time. If you play knight c3, though, that gives black some ideas. And then that's not so easy anymore. So this is the reason it's actually pretty good for white to play like that. I think Ergaisi did... if I'm not mistaken, I think he may have done this and actually went for bishop b4. I don't remember this game, but I think, there was like a bishop b4 has been played. But the game ended in a draw, but it was really a good line for white to play. So again, keep in mind that knight d2 is actually the trappy thing. The trap the bishop on c2. So this is the reason why the next move is an attempt by black to play h5. What's the point of h5? So h5 is basically saying, should you play g5 or I take? The bishop goes back to f5 perhaps. And then black kind of solve all his problems. And the bishop could, he's doubling up the pawns for white. He just goes back. Everything is good. It's not that easy because the next move is pretty good. I think the next move is pretty logical if you think about it. You just play here. What's the point of rook g1? Simply, should you take, which actually happened, should you take, you're still being trapped. You still cannot go here because the pawn will get you. The next move is kind of interesting. I think that was the move, yeah. So I think I was looking at knight e4 and some other lines, and they all feel like it's in favor for white, and I think Gukesh was prepared for knight e4. I think the only good move is knight b d7. However, Ding went into a deep sink, and he's found it like in maybe 30-40 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. It was like really tons of time that he spent on this move. Time management is key, especially in the World Championship. If knight d7 was found earlier, things would have been changed, perhaps. It could change the outcome of the game. I think you need to spend that tons of time in a critical position, but spending that amount of time in the opening, I don't know if I could justify it enough. I mean, knight d7 looked like a reasonable move. Sometimes players look going through memories. You try to see if if they've seen this before. You try to do this move and like check the board and check the moves and try to do it. But there's sometimes they try to remember games in the like they have their own database too. They try to remember if this has been played before, and he could remember a certain game where that this may have been played before. However, you needed to play a little bit faster. Try to reserve the time in a better situation where you're playing a very difficult situation where you have to sink for 20-30 minutes. So I felt like knight bd7 could have been played much quicker. That being said, the next move is knight bd7, as we predicted. Now, knight d2 is now becoming interesting. White is trying to claim that rook c1 is coming. And here's the thing. Knight d2 is defending on b3, and then the bishop has nowhere to go. How can you save this position? You need to find a way to get back. The bishop has to be defended. How could he defend it? I think many people couldn't figure out the next move. I think it was logical move. So the idea is, how could you get back to the this diagonal? I mean, you could argue and say g5 is a move, but it's not a great move because you sack a pawn for that, and it's not that great. Next move is logical. I don't think it's impossible to find. Going back, that was Ding's choice, rook g8, and I think rook g8 is logical. Why he's looking at g5? He protect the pawn and he attacked the bishop at the same time. So I think, should you play here? G5. And I think bishop e3. And now it's tricky how you go back. So should you go back here? It's a mistake, right? You lose a pawn. You could have won back here. This is one way you could go back. There's also here. And I think here, f3 are kind of equal, I guess. I would rather be white here, but this is possibly the best that I think maybe Gukesh could have. This is competitive. The two bishops. The pawn being on g5, it could be tackleable at some point. So it's a competitive game here. Possibly draw would be the outcome of this. In this setup. I feel like this is the best way to go for white. To be honest. You don't want to, of course. I mean, the next move is I already made the move, but Gukesh did like g5. That was his choice, and I feel like this move is completely shocking. Not just shocking, completely shocking. Why? There's an obvious reason for this. I mean, the bishop is no longer trapped, and I felt like the whole line is depending on how the bishop could be having an issue going back. I mean, black must have been happy seeing this because the bishop could always go back. So what's the point of this move? And again, here's the computer possibly liking black, seeing that the bishop could go back to f5 at some point. However, now black has activity with the pieces, and the next move is no-brainer, actually, is knight h5. Your bishop is being under attack. Next move is logical, taking all the key squares from the knight. Rook h8. It looks like black is getting active. He wants to move here and then attack the bishop. Next move is very logical by Gukesh, f3. So now he's going back to try to trap the bishop. But again, he had this chance to keep the pawn at g4. So it's just keeping the bishop that way trapped. Kind of trapped. But f3 is the only way to try. And I felt like here, knight g7 is pretty good. You're attacking here, pretty good. Bishop g3. Now, the next move is I felt like this is could be done in a couple of seconds. I don't know. I mean, if I'm playing black, I'll probably do this move quickly. We are being taught that you have to develop. We're being taught that you develop. If you're able to develop and attack a piece in the same time, it will be great. So you develop, you attack, you're forcing your opponent to defend. I feel like bishop e7 was pretty good. Honestly, what's wrong with this move? It's pretty logical, no issues, you know. Uh, and I think maybe here, should you play rook c1, which I think would have haven't happened, I guess. Should you play here e4, bishop e6? I mean, I feel like black is like really good here. I don't know. The pieces are really active. G5 is under attack now. It should be active position for both sides, but I think black is active. I think the computer really likes here. And also you have to worry about this G pawn throughout the game, you know. Its potential attackable pawn. This would have been more than fine for black, to be honest. And I felt like this is coming fast enough, but to my surprise, it didn't. It did not. So after f3, let's see, here. Rook h5 is like, what? You know, like, what is this move? You know, I couldn't understand it. I mean, I'm a master, chess master myself, national master. I couldn't understand that move. I could see maybe like Ding didn't consider like e4 being a problem. He may have some counterplay. He may be attacking the pawn at g5. The reason I couldn't understand that move is because I think e4 is like, you know, it's pretty powerful. And you're not really attacking g5. I mean, that seems to be the shocking news for me, or for, you know, for everybody, is like e4, you're not taking this. I mean, your bishop is trapped. Should you play a knight here, h5, bishop here, and I feel like, you know, you just done a piece, you know, take, and then the bishop is trapped. You know, I mean, that feels like it's easier, much easier for white to do. Going back, it almost feels like rook h5 just doesn't make too much sense here. Maybe he felt like he had some counterplay, just like I mentioned, but there was better moves as bishop e7 and the problems, even knight e6 at some point. But, you know, he had much better moves than rook h5. Just bishop e7 is more than enough. He played here and then e4, and now the question is, you know, the bishop is like trapped somehow, and how could he defend this? Black he still have a chance to defend. I think he has to play knight e6. You have to be precise now, because your bishop is really trapped, right? I think something like here, and let's say rook c1. The point of knight e6 is you take on d4, so you're defending on c2. And I think the best line is around here. And you have to be careful here. Should you take here? I think rook g2, maybe black, you know, white could continue this, takes. Your bishop is trapped, so should you takes here, and then some kind of a5. You look at this position, it's kind of a mess. This is no longer easy. It's easy to make the moves fast enough. I mean, considering Ding is actually in time trouble right now in this situation. So this would be like a really active position for black. You have a piece, but this is good luck winning this one. This is extremely difficult. So going back, that would have been an interesting line to play for black. But he took here, and I felt it's not the same. It's not the same setup. This is a move order thing here that seems to play a role for, you know, white and black. So he took, and then knight e6, and I believe the problem though, rook c1, and now your bishop is trapped in most lines. But however, I think he takes, and then here. And here you have to play the only move. There's one move that I think may save him. And I think if you were to play bishop g7, it's not the greatest. And I think it was a blunder. I think you have to play here. And there's like a move order thing. You don't have knight e2, I don't think. You don't have knight e2. You don't have knight e2 in this line. Because you do trade on the bishop and f2. And it becomes like there's no bishop pair for white. As opposed to the other line. By the way, should you play, let's say if you play here, you just simply take, and then it's not that clear that, you know, I mean, this is possibly still up a piece, you still have to sack a piece, but this is a playable for black. And then obviously the other one is just not at the great, and we could see why is not the greatest move. I think Ding did bishop here, bishop g7. The reason is white is not obligated to take. He's not obligated to take here. He just have much better move, and this guy is like completely strong. He's not gonna miss it. It's 92, which is absolutely the strongest move in the board. That the reason why this is good because he's still gonna lose a piece for a couple of pawns. I mean, 2 pawns. But however, pieces are active. You still maintain the 2 bishop pair. So that's actually what happened here. Takes. This is possibly 0-4's take. And then takes here. So you could see that this bishop pair are pretty strong. It's probably still in practice not easy to win with white, but I mean, it's possibly for Gukesh to get after move 40, he probably might find a way. I mean, this is actually pretty good. It's just in practice, maybe black may have some drawing chances, but he had much better line like bishop c5, and bishop c5 line would have been a lot more complicated for white to play. Usually you have to complicate things for your opponent, right? And that's the goal. So here, Gukesh has to be a little bit careful here how to take. Let's say you take with a rook. This is not very good, 95, and this is like a mess. And would be a blunder too, because usually here, if you were to play bishop g2, this rook takes. And should he play rook g3, try to stop all the knight f3 stuff, you could just take here. And then look at this, knight f3, and this actually a mess. You just take an additional pawn, and this is not easy anymore. This is really rough to play. So the best move, and he would not make this mistake, the best move is by far is you take with the king. You don't have the after 95, you don't have the same ideas. So 95, which is it's an attempt. What else does black have? So knight d4 is an excellent move. I feel like this is where things are being covered. Knight f3. The next move is pretty logical. I felt like he could castle long or something, and I don't know if it matters, but as we predicted in game 1, you castle by move 31 and you castle long by move 26. But jokes aside, rook d8 is okay. He's just aiming for knight f3. The next move is pretty good. King over is very strong. You're stopping knight f3, and I don't know if black could hold this. I don't think it's holdable, but white still have to have some precision on this position somehow. And I think it's a lot easier to play for white. Of course, you up a piece. I think the real issue here, Ding is on time trouble. So should you be committed to play something really big here, as far as like trading down? This may help him to get to move 40, and then maybe if the position's still complex and it's not easy. So I think Gukesh did the right stuff. I mean, considering the time situation at the time. So rook h2, bishop g2, a6. We're starting to look like this is going to be like a waiting move kind of thing. b3 is excellent move. You're stopping knight c4, all these knight jumps. I actually felt like knight g4 was the potential, but it's not. Knight f3, I think, and then he attacked the rook, and then black will be really passive here. So the rook d7, another waiting move, and then rook c1. This is an excellent move because you're going to rook d1. White is making some waiting move, but it's not the same as waiting move. b3 is possibly the reason it's pretty good is actually knight c4, and also the bishop doesn't eye on b2. But this rook is going to d1, so this is like a preparation to try to get active with the rook. So I actually was surprised by king e7. I think it's also a waiting move, but he spent like a good amount of time to think about this move and make it. I think this is like almost an instant move he could do without any kind of an issue. But he spent some time here, and then rook d1, king e8. Now it's a waiting move here, and the only quick move that he did is rook h5, I believe. There's nothing else you could do here, perhaps, for black. I mean, it's just making moves. And then knight f3. I felt here this is the last choice for Ding to save the game. I think possibly here, and then takes, and knight d7. That's the best you could do. And this is like 2 quick moves that he could do. And here could have been different for black because he could easily make moves, considering the time control. So this is maybe the best he could do. White's still good here, by the way, but That's the best I think Black could do. He did not. He surprised me with the next move, and I think the reason is I wouldn't be too much of a surprise here because the time. I mean, he must have like 1 minute in his clock here. It's very difficult to play this in 1 minute, and you still have to make what 10 moves. Very difficult. Takes, and you have to be careful not taking with. If you take with the bishop, I think you may walk into like rook takes g5, and that would be a pawn, good pawn to take, and it's not that easy now for white. You have to be precise, and the best precise move is actually king takes. King takes, and then bishop d4, and then we have rook h1. Excellent move. Bishop d4 does not do much. I mean, here is very difficult. This is already like losing. Rook h1 and then rook takes g5. Here is a blunder, I believe. And I think he had bishop h3 even after like the move before, after rook takes g5. Bishop h3 is now attacked with check. And then we have like f5. And then we have simply bishop f4. This is completely losing. There's nothing you do. Rook h5 was played. And I think here he flagged. Not even resigning. This is totally losing because of bishop takes f5. Should you take? I win you rook. Should you take here? I just win with check takes, and this is like up a rook now. So this is actually the reason why he, I mean, he didn't resign. He flagged. So it didn't matter should he reach move 40 here. It wouldn't matter because this is simply winning. Good game though. Good fight. We'll see by game 4. I mean, this is equivalent to like 3 draws. I mean, it's not 3 draws, but equivalent to that. Each side won a game. So this is actually kind of like the match just begins in game 4. Any prediction in game 4, I think now Ding that has, a rest day, and obviously he had his rest day. And he's taking white. My prediction, I predicted that he would play c4. English was the previous game in game 2. He did not. Now I think he may do c4. Or he could go back to d4. I don't know if he's going to play e4 again. I think maybe c4 is really something that he could do. He's more comfortable playing the English. I've seen him play tons of English. And he could test Gukesh if he has different ideas on the English. It's possibly a good thing. I don't know if we could get the Catalan. It's possibly in English in game 4. It's going to be fun. The game is tied, and it's anybody's match. And that's what we'll have to see. More games, competitive, and Gukesh is back. And also, Ding is still there. Just because he lost the game does not mean anything. The match is beginning at this point. From game 4 and beyond, this is where things are going to get exciting. Hopefully you guys enjoy this content and stay tuned for more game reviews. Take care.